Everyone thought he was the weakest student to ever set foot in Valorhein Academy, a talentless commoner who somehow slipped through the enrollment cracks. But when Kael Ashford walked through those ancient gates for the very first time, something dormant inside him stirred, something that would make every senior mage, every prodigy, every noble heir question everything they believed about power. This is the story of a boy who awakened abilities that shouldn't exist, passive skills that worked without him even trying. And on his very first day, he would crush the pride of students who had trained their entire lives. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone path leading to Valorhein Academy. Massive spires of white marble pierced the clouds above, each tower humming with ancient enchantments that had protected this institution for over 1,000 years. Students in pristine uniforms walked past wrought iron gates adorned with the Academy's crest, a phoenix clutching a crystalline orb in its talons. Among them walked Kael Ashford, 18 years old, with messy black hair and worn clothing that immediately marked him as an outsider. His shoes were scuffed, his jacket was patched in 3 places, and unlike every other student who practically radiated magical energy, Kael seemed completely ordinary. He clutched his enrollment letter tightly, still barely believing he was here. 3 months ago, he had been working in his uncle's bakery in a small village called Thornwick, a place so insignificant it didn't appear on most maps. Magic was something he only read about in old books borrowed from the traveling merchant who passed through twice a year. Then the awakening happened. He still remembered that night, the fever that burned through him for 3 days. The strange dreams filled with impossible colors and whispered voices. When he finally opened his eyes, everything looked different. He could see faint traces of energy around living things, and deep in his chest, he felt something new, something waiting. The village healer, an elderly woman named Mira who possessed only enough magic to light a candle, had examined him with trembling hands. She declared he had awakened magical potential, which meant by imperial law he was required to attend one of the kingdom's academies for proper training. The alternative was imprisonment or exile, as unregistered mages were considered a threat to public safety. Valorhein Academy had been the only institution willing to accept a commoner with no family connections, no prior training, and an awakening that occurred years later than normal. Most children showed magical ability by age 10 or 12. Kael was a complete anomaly. Walking through those gates, he could feel the stares. Students whispered behind their hands. A group of girls in elaborate robes giggled as he passed. One young man with silver hair and an embroidered cape openly sneered. "Is that a servant?" the silver-haired student asked loudly. "Someone should tell him the help enters through the back." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Kael kept walking, his jaw tight. He had expected this. Every village kid dreamed of attending a magic academy, but the reality was that these institutions were dominated by noble families who had refined their bloodlines for generations. A commoner like him was rarer than a 2-headed dragon. He found his way to the registration hall, a cavernous room with crystal chandeliers that floated without any visible support. A bored-looking administrator behind a desk glanced at his letter, then did a double-take. Kael Ashford, the late awakening case. The man's eyebrows rose. "I thought you were a clerical error. I'm real," Kael replied quietly. "Is there a problem with my enrollment?" The administrator shuffled through papers, clearly uncomfortable. No problem. Oh, I should warn you. Your aptitude assessment placed you at the lowest tier, grade F. That's the first F we've assigned in 17 years. Kael felt his stomach drop. What does that mean? It means you'll be in the remedial track, basic courses only. You won't be eligible for advanced magic study, combat training, or any of the prestigious programs. Most F-tier students either transfer out or drop out within the first semester. The man slid a badge across the desk. It was plain bronze, while Kael had noticed other students wearing silver, gold, and even platinum badges. Your dorm assignment is in the East Wing. That's where the less distinguished students reside. Taking the badge, Kael felt something flicker in his chest. That strange presence that had awakened with him seemed to pulse, almost like it was responding to his emotions. It pushed the feeling down and headed toward the East Wing. The dormitory was exactly as grim as he expected. A cramped building that looked like it hadn't been renovated in decades. The stones were cracked, the windows were small and grimy. Inside, the hallways smelled of mildew and neglect. His room was on the 3rd floor, barely larger than a closet. A narrow bed, a desk that wobbled, and a wardrobe with one door hanging off its hinges. Kael sat on the bed and stared at the ceiling. What am I even doing here? He muttered. As if in response, something appeared in his vision, a translucent blue screen that floated in front of his eyes, visible only to him. STEM notification, welcome host. Passive skill system fully activated. Current status, dormant abilities detected. Integration beginning. Kael jerked backwards so violently, he fell off the bed. What the screen remained, patiently displaying its message. Available passive skills. Mana absorption passive. Automatically absorbs ambient magical energy. Current absorption rate 0.01%. Danger sense passive. Provides instinctive awareness of threats. Currently inactive. Skills locked. Unlock conditions not yet met. A system? Kael whispered. He had heard stories about legendary heroes from ancient times who possessed mysterious abilities granted by the gods. But those were myths, fairy tales told to children. This can't be real. He reached out to touch the screen, but his fingers passed right through it. The system was entirely mental, existing only within his perception. STMO notification, host may dismiss or summon status screen through mental command. Recommend maintaining secrecy regarding system existence. Kael's heart was racing. He didn't understand what was happening, but he recognized an opportunity when he saw 1. The system mentioned passive skills, abilities that worked automatically without his active input. If he could develop these, a knock at his door made him jump. The status screen vanished instantly. New student, a cheerful voice called from outside. Dorm orientation starts in 10 minutes. Don't be late, or the hall monitor gives extra cleaning duty. Kael composed himself and opened the door. A young man about his age stood there, short and stocky, with freckles scattered across his nose. Unlike most students Kael had seen, this one looked genuinely friendly. I'm Rowan Belwick, the young man said, extending his hand. Also F tier, so I figured I'd check on our newest member of the loser brigade. Don't worry, we've all made peace with our mediocrity. Kael shook his hand, noting that Rowan's grip was firm despite his self-deprecating words. Kael Ashford. Is it really that bad being F tier? Rowan shrugged. Depends on your perspective. We don't get access to the good training facilities, the advanced courses, or pretty much any opportunity to improve. Most of us are here because the law requires it, not because anyone expects us to become actual mages. But hey, at least we don't have to deal with the pressure the elite students face. They walked together toward the orientation hall, and Rowan filled him in on the academy's hierarchy. At the top were the S-tier students, those with exceptional talent from powerful noble families. They had their own private wing, personal instructors, and access to resources that lower-tier students could only dream about. Below them were A-tier through D-tier, a gradient of decreasing privilege and opportunity. E-tier students were considered borderline failures but still received basic instruction. F-tier was essentially academic purgatory, a holding area for those deemed too weak to matter. The real problem, Rowan said as they entered a modest hall filled with other F-tier students, is the seniors, especially the ones who think they're destined for greatness. They like to prove their superiority by making us look bad. Combat demonstrations, magical duels, sometimes just straight up bullying. The professors pretend not to notice. Kael absorbed this information silently. He counted about 40 students in the orientation hall, all wearing the same plain bronze badges. Most looked dejected, resigned to their fate. A few seemed defiant. One girl with short red hair caught his eye because she was the only one taking notes. The orientation itself was unremarkable. A tired instructor named Professor Vance explained the rules, the schedule, and the limited curriculum available to them. Basic magical theory, elementary spellcasting, remedial physical training. Nothing that would prepare them for actual combat or advanced magical applications. Remember, Professor Vance concluded without enthusiasm, your role here is to learn enough to pass the Imperial Certification exam. Nothing more is expected of you. Class assignments will be posted tomorrow morning. Dismissed. As students filed out, Kael noticed the red-haired girl approaching him. You're the late awakening case, she said bluntly. I heard the administrator talking about you, 18 years old with zero prior training and the lowest aptitude score in nearly 2 decades. How are you not panicking? Should I be? Kael asked. Most people in your situation would be. She studied him with sharp green eyes. I'm Ella Ravorn. My family used to be minor nobility until my grandfather lost everything gambling. Now I'm here because I can't afford any better academy. What's your excuse? Born in a village so small it doesn't have a name on most maps. Awakened 3 months ago in the middle of the night with no warning. Kael shrugged. I'm still figuring out what's happening. Alara's expression softened slightly. At least you're honest. Most commoners try to fabricate impressive backstories. Listen, stick close to people you trust. The first few weeks are when the upper tier students test the new arrivals. They call it tradition, we call it torture. Before Kael could respond, the doors to the hall burst open. A group of students strode in wearing silver and gold badges, their uniforms pristine, their expressions arrogant. At their head was the silver-haired young man Kael had seen earlier, the one who had called him a servant. Well, well, the silver-haired student announced loudly. The remedial cattle are gathering, how quaint. His companions laughed. The F-tier students shrank back, avoiding eye contact. That's Aldrich Vance, Rowan whispered to Kael, son of the professor who just gave our orientation. A-tier student, incredible talent, and an absolute nightmare of a human being. His family has produced royal court mages for 6 generations. Aldrich's gaze swept the room until it landed on Kael. His lips curled into a cruel smile. You, the commoner who somehow got enrolled. I've been hearing the most amusing rumors about you. He strode forward until he was directly in front of Kael. A late awakening at 18? Grade F aptitude? You must have truly pathetic magical potential. Kael met his eyes steadily. Is there something you need? The room went dead silent. No one spoke to Aldrich Vance like that. Need? Eldrick laughed. I need nothing from you, peasant. I simply wanted to see the joke for myself. Tell me, what backwater swamp did they drag you from? Does your family even know what magic is? My family grows wheat and bakes bread. Kael replied calmly. I imagine your family has no idea how either of those things work. Several F-tier students gasped. Ilara grabbed Kael's arm in warning, but Kael's attention was elsewhere. That strange sensation in his chest was pulsing again, stronger now, and a notification appeared in his peripheral vision. Hostile intent detected. Danger sense passive skill partially activating. Aldrich's face flushed with anger. You dare mock me? Do you have any idea who I am? Someone who barges into other people's orientation meetings to feel superior, Kael said. If you're that talented, shouldn't you be practicing somewhere? Or does bullying weaker students count as training in your family? The slap came fast. Aldrich's hand cracked across Kael's face with enough force to knock him sideways. Magical energy amplified the blow, making it far more painful than a normal strike. Know your place, Aldrich snarled. You are nothing. You will always be nothing. And if you ever speak to me like that again, I will make your life here a living hell. Kael straightened slowly, his cheek burning, but something else was happening inside him. The system was reacting. Steam notification, physical trauma detected. Mana absorption accelerating, absorbing residual magical energy from attack. He felt it then, a tiny stream of energy flowing into him from where Aldrich's magically enhanced slap had connected. It was barely noticeable, like a single drop of water in an empty bucket, but it was something. Aldrich and his group left laughing, satisfied with their dominance display. The F-tier students slowly relaxed, shooting sympathetic looks at Kael. Are you okay? Ilara asked. That was incredibly stupid. Brave, but stupid. I'm fine. Kael touched his cheek, already feeling the pain fade. Does he do that often? Often enough, Rowan said grimly. His father's a professor, so he never faces consequences. Most of us learn to stay invisible. Kael nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the system notification, about the energy he had absorbed from that attack. If his passive skill could convert hostile magic into power, then every confrontation became an opportunity. That night, alone in his cramped room, Kael summoned the status screen again. Current status: Host, Kael Ashford Tier, F Official Academy Assessment, True Potential Unknown, System Analysis Ongoing, Passive Skills, Mana Absorption Level 1, absorbed 0.01% of ambient magical energy. Recently absorbed residual attack energy. Current mana reservoir 0.3 units. Danger sense, level 0, partially activated. requires further stimulation to fully unlock. Locked skills, 47 unlock conditions vary. Exposure to diverse magical phenomena required. 47 locked skills. Kael stared at the number in disbelief. What kind of abilities were waiting to be unlocked? And what did exposure to diverse magical phenomena mean? He thought about tomorrow, his first actual day of classes. The limitations of the F-tier curriculum, the hostility of students like Aldrich, the indifference of the institution itself. Maybe, he realized, those weren't obstacles. Maybe they were exactly what he needed. The next morning, Kael woke before dawn. The system informed him that his mana absorption worked better during sleep, when his mind was quiet and receptive. His reservoir had grown from 0.3 units to 0.5 units overnight, drawing from the ambient magic that permeated the entire academy. It was laughably small. From what he understood, even the weakest F-tier students had mana reserves measured in dozens of units. A proper mage could hold hundreds or thousands. But Kael wasn't discouraged. He was a late awakening case with no training. The fact that he was gaining anything at all proved the system was real and working. His first class was basic magical theory, taught by a disinterested professor who seemed annoyed at having to work with F-tier students at all. The lecture covered fundamental concepts that Kael found genuinely fascinating: the nature of mana, how magical circuits formed in the body, the relationship between willpower and spellcasting. Most of his classmates dozed or stared blankly, but Kael took detailed notes, and as he did, he noticed something interesting. Every time the professor demonstrated a magical concept, creating a small light orb or making water float, Kael's mana absorption ticked upward ever so slightly. He was learning and absorbing simultaneously. STEM notification. Theoretical knowledge enhancing absorption efficiency. Current rate improved to 0.012%. It was a tiny improvement, but the implications were enormous. The more he understood about magic, the better his passive skill worked. Knowledge wasn't just power here, it was literal fuel. After theory class came elementary spellcasting practice. A different professor, a stern woman named Magistra Chen, led them to a training courtyard where they would attempt to cast their first spell. The illumination spell is the simplest magic a mage can learn, Magistra Chen explained, demonstrating by making a small ball of light appear above her palm. It requires minimal mana, basic visualization, and proper channel formation. You will practice until you can hold the light for at least 5 seconds. She handed out crystals that measured magical output. These will glow when you successfully channel mana. If the crystal lights up, you have taken the first step toward becoming a mage. If it doesn't, she shrugged. Well, that's why you're in remedial classes. Students spread out and began trying. Kael watched them struggle, some managing faint glimmers, others producing nothing at all. Rowan managed a brief flicker before his crystal went dark. Ilara achieved a steady glow for about 3 seconds, earning a nod from the Magistra. Kael held his crystal and concentrated. He visualized the light spell as the professor had demonstrated, trying to push his mana through the proper channels. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Don't force it, Magistra Chen said, having noticed his struggles. F-tier students often have difficulty with active casting. Your magical circuits may not be fully developed. Keep practicing, but manage your expectations. She moved on to help other students. Kael stared at his dark crystal, frustration building. He had been so focused on his passive skills that he hadn't considered the possibility that he couldn't cast spells at all. But then a system notification appeared. Active casting failure detected. Analyzing magical circuit structure. Host circuits are unconventional, not underdeveloped. Standard casting methods incompatible. Alternative approach suggested: channel mana through passive skill network instead of traditional circuits. Alternative approach. Kael concentrated again, but this time, instead of trying to push energy outward, he visualized pulling energy from his reservoir through the same pathways his passive absorption used, then releasing it in the form of light. The crystal in his hand exploded with brilliance. Not a glow, not a flicker. A blinding flash that made everyone in the courtyard shield their eyes. Magistra Chen spun around, her own protective barrier snapping up instinctively. What in the... She stared at Kael's crystal, which was still radiating light so intensely it was humming. That's not possible. That output is at least B-tier magnitude. Kael was equally shocked. He had used barely any mana from his tiny reservoir, yet the effect was massively disproportionate. It was as if his unconventional approach had eliminated almost all waste, making every unit of mana count for 10 times its value. The light finally faded as his reservoir emptied. The crystal in his hand was warm to the touch, but undamaged. Around him, students were murmuring, pointing, staring with expressions ranging from confusion to jealousy. How did you do that? Magistra Chen demanded, striding toward him. Your official aptitude rating is F. You shouldn't be capable of that output. I don't know, Kael said honestly. I just tried something different. She studied him with narrowed eyes. Report to my office after classes today. I want to examine your magical circuits personally. As she walked away, Kael felt eyes boring into him from across the courtyard. He turned to find Aldrich Vance standing at the edge of the training area with his entourage, having apparently been watching the remedial class for entertainment. The silver-haired noble's expression was no longer amused. It was calculating. Interesting, Aldrich said quietly, just loud enough for Kael to hear. Very interesting. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. News of Kael's anomalous spell spread through the academy like wildfire. By lunch, strangers were pointing at him in hallways. Some F-tier students looked at him with newfound hope, wondering if they too might be capable of unexpected power. Others seemed resentful, as if his success highlighted their own failures. Rowan and Alara sat with him in the remedial cafeteria, a cramped dining hall separate from the main facility where upper-tier students enjoyed their meals. You know this makes you a target, right? Alara said, picking at her food. That display didn't just embarrass Aldrich yesterday. Now you've shown you might actually have talent. He'll see you as a threat. I'm not trying to threaten anyone, Kael replied. I'm just trying to learn. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do. What matters is how people perceive you. She leaned closer. Aldrich's pride is everything to him. His family's reputation depends on him being the best. A commoner from nowhere outshining him, even accidentally, he won't let that stand. Rowan nodded grimly. There's something else you should know. Tomorrow is the monthly combat demonstration. It's supposed to be a teaching event where senior students show off techniques for younger ones to learn from. But really, it's a chance for people like Aldrich to humiliate whoever they want under the guise of education. They challenge people to duels? Kael asked. Not exactly duels. More like demonstrations where the senior absolutely destroys a junior, claims they're teaching them about real combat, and everyone pretends it's educational. Rowan shuddered. I got picked last month. Aldrich's friend Sarah froze me solid and left me in the courtyard for an hour before anyone thawed me out. Kael was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then a notification appeared. STEM notification, combat scenario anticipated. New passive skill unlocking sequence initiated. Skill requirements: survive hostile magical attacks, absorb diverse magical energies, experience genuine combat stress. He almost smiled. The system wanted him to fight. After lunch, Kael made his way to Magistrat Chen's office as instructed. The room was cluttered with magical apparatus, charts of human anatomy showing mana circuits, and shelves of ancient texts. Sit, the Magistra commanded, gesturing to a chair surrounded by glowing runes. I'm going to scan your magical structure. This may feel uncomfortable. The scan was more than uncomfortable. It felt like cold fingers probing inside his chest, examining parts of him that shouldn't be touchable. Kael gritted his teeth and endured, noting that his mana absorption was actually accelerating during the process, feeding on the magical energy of the scan itself. Finally, Magistra Chen stepped back, her expression troubled. Your circuits are like nothing I've ever seen, she admitted. The standard pathways that every mage possesses are present but dormant, almost atrophied. By all rights, you shouldn't be able to cast anything. But I did cast something, Kael pointed out. You did, because somehow you've developed an entirely different network. She pointed to a diagram she had created during the scan. These pathways don't exist in any textbook. They're not human standard. They're more efficient, more direct, but completely incompatible with traditional spellcasting methods. Kael studied the diagram, recognizing the pathways as what the system called his passive skill network. What does that mean for my training? It means I have no idea how to teach you. Magistrate Chen looked frustrated. Standard curriculum won't work. Your magical structure is too different. You'll have to develop your own methods through trial and error. Will I be expelled? She hesitated, The Academy Charter requires us to train every enrolled student. Your unusual circumstances don't change that obligation. You'll remain in remedial classes officially, but I'm recommending additional independent study hours. Use them to experiment safely. As Kael left her office, another notification appeared. SY STEM notification, analysis complete. Host's magical structure is unique. Standard mages channel mana through circuits. Host channels through passive skill network, which is inherently more efficient but requires different activation methods. This explains why passive skills awaken naturally while active spells require unconventional approaches. So he was different, maybe even broken by normal standards. But different wasn't necessarily worse. If his efficiency was truly higher than normal mages, then a small mana reserve could accomplish things that should require far more power. He just needed to build that reserve. The afternoon brought physical training, which for F tier students meant jogging around a track and doing basic exercises while upper tier students practice combat forms with enchanted equipment nearby. The contrast was intentional and demoralizing. But Kael noticed something during his jog. Every time he passed close to the upper tier training area, where magic was being actively used, his absorption rate spiked. The passive skill was feeding on the residual energy from their spellcasting. He started deliberately running routes that brought him closer to the practice sessions. The other F tier students thought he was crazy, risking proximity to students who might target him for harassment. But Kael was too busy watching his mana reservoir slowly climb to care. By the end of physical training, he had gained 2 full units of mana. At his normal rate, that would have taken days. Environmental adaptation detected. Mana absorption efficiency increased when in proximity to active magical usage. Current rate in high magic zones, 0.05%. 5 times his base rate. If he could spend more time near powerful magic users, his growth would accelerate dramatically. The problem was access. F-tier students weren't allowed in advanced training facilities. The library's restricted section required special permission. Even walking through certain hallways triggered ward alerts if you were below a certain badge tier, unless someone invited him. The solution came from an unexpected source. That evening, as Kael was returning to his dorm, he found a note slipped under his door. Heard about your light show? Want to see more? Come to Training Hall 7 at midnight. Come alone. There was no signature. The paper was expensive. The handwriting elegant. This was from someone with resources. Rowan, who had been visiting, looked alarmed. That's obviously a trap. Training Hall 7 is in the elite wing. If you're caught there after hours, you'll be expelled. Maybe, Kael said, studying the note. But whoever sent this went to significant effort. They could have simply reported me or attacked me in public. Why the secrecy? Because they want to hurt you privately, Alara suggested. Having arrived with a borrowed textbook, no witnesses means no consequences. Or because they're curious and don't want others to know they're interested in an F-tier student. Kael folded the note carefully. I'm going. That's insane, Rowan said flatly. Probably, but my instincts are telling me this is an opportunity. He caught his slip just in time. He hadn't told anyone about the system, and he didn't intend to. If I don't come back by morning, tell Magistra Chen what happened. At midnight, Kael crept through the academy's darkened corridors. The elite wing was guarded by magical sentries, floating crystals that scanned for unauthorized badges. But Kael had been observing them during his runs, noting their patrol patterns and blind spots. He slipped past 2 sentries and found Training Hall 7 unlocked. Inside, the vast space was lit by floating orbs that cast a soft blue glow, and waiting for him in the center was a young woman he had never seen before. She was tall, with long black hair and features that spoke of Eastern heritage. Her uniform marked her as a senior student, and her badge was platinum, the highest tier possible. She radiated magical power like a bonfire radiated heat. You actually came, she said, sounding genuinely surprised. Most would have assumed it was an ambush. It probably is, Kael replied, staying near the exit. But I'm curious what a platinum tier student wants with the academy's biggest joke. She laughed, a genuine sound that echoed through the hall. Direct. I like that. I'm Missandra Feng, heir to the Feng magical dynasty, and you're Kael Ashford, the anomaly who shouldn't exist. What do you want to understand? She began walking slowly around the hall, forcing Kael to turn to keep her in view. Your aptitude assessment rated you as the weakest student in 17 years, yet you produced B-tier magical output this morning using methods no one could identify. Magister Chen's scan revealed a completely novel magical structure. You're either a fraud with hidden backing or something genuinely unprecedented. I'm not a fraud, then you're unprecedented, which means you're interesting. She stopped walking and faced him directly. The Academy is corrupt, Kael. Talent is supposed to matter here, but it doesn't. Connections matter, bloodlines matter, political alliances matter. The ranking system exists to preserve existing hierarchies, not to identify true potential. I'd. Kael felt his danger sense stirring, not because she was threatening him, but because this conversation was dangerous in a different way. Why are you telling me this? Because someone needs to shake things up. The Vance family has controlled this academy for generations. They've systematically suppressed anyone who might challenge their dominance. Your existence threatens their narrative of noble superiority. Lyssandra's eyes gleamed. Tomorrow's combat demonstration, Aldrich will challenge you. He's already planning it. He'll try to crush you publicly to prove that your morning display was a fluke. I expected that. Good. But did you expect that he'll use a technique called Argentum Binding? It's a family spell that suppresses magical circuits, preventing the victim from casting anything. In theory, it's a teaching tool. In practice, it's a torture device. Once bound, you'll be helpless while he beats you until you beg for mercy or lose consciousness. Kael's mind raced. His magical circuits weren't standard. Would the binding even work on him? And if it didn't, what would that reveal? Why warn me? He asked. What do you gain? Entertainment, perhaps. Or maybe I simply enjoy watching arrogant nobles fail. Lysandra smiled mysteriously. I have a proposal. Let me train you tonight. Show me what you can do, and I'll teach you techniques that might counter what Aldrich throws at you. If you survive the demonstration tomorrow, you'll have proven something, and I'll consider that payment enough. It was too convenient, too helpful. Every instinct told Kael this woman had her own agenda, but the system thought otherwise. STEM notification, high-level magical training opportunity detected, potential for significant skill development. Recommendation, accept offer. Fine, Kael said. Show me. What followed was the most intense 4 hours of his life. Lysandra was a brutal instructor. She attacked him without warning, forcing him to dodge spells that left craters in the training hall floor. She threw magical constructs at him that shattered into fragments when they hit. She used binding spells, freezing spells, fire spells, and techniques he couldn't even name. And through it all, Kael absorbed. Every spell that hit him fed his mana absorption. Every near-miss leaked residual energy that his passive skill devoured. His danger sense activated fully, unlocking under the pressure of genuine combat stress. New skills appeared in his status screen, one after another. STEM notification, danger sense upgraded to level 1. Now provides directional awareness of immediate threats. STEM notification, new passive skill unlocked. Mana Shield passive, automatically forms a protective barrier when lethal damage is imminent. Requires mana. STEM notification, new passive skill unlocked. Recovery enhancement, passive. Accelerates healing of all injuries. Currently healing minor wounds. By the time Lysandra called a halt, Kael was exhausted, bruised, and had depleted his mana reserve 3 times. But that reserve was now significantly larger than before, having been stretched through repeated use. And he had 3 new passive skills. Remarkable, Lysandra said, barely breathing hard despite her exertions. You absorbed more magical energy in 4 hours than most students gather in a month. Your unusual structure isn't a weakness. It's an advantage you haven't fully exploited yet. Will it be enough for tomorrow? That depends on you. She tossed him a small crystal. This is a mana battery. I've charged it with enough energy to fill your reserve several times over. Consider it alone. Don't waste it. Kael caught the crystal, feeling the power humming inside it. Thank you. But I still don't understand why you're helping me. Because I have my own grudge against the Vance family. For a moment, Lysandra's composure cracked, revealing something cold and hard underneath. Aldrich's father destroyed someone I cared about, proving that the son is weaker than a commoner nobody would be. Satisfying. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. During the demonstration, when Aldrich uses the Argentum binding, don't resist it. Let him think it's working. Then, when he's confident and off guard, show him exactly how wrong he was about you. She was gone before he could respond. Kael returned to his dorm as dawn was breaking, the mana battery hidden in his jacket. He should have slept, but his mind was racing too fast. Instead, he sat on his bed and checked his status. Current status: Host, Kael Ashford tier. F official unknown true mana reserve. 47 units, increased from 0.5, growth rate, accelerating passive skills, mana absorption, level 2, current rate 0.08% base. Higher and active magical environments, danger sense, level 1. Provides directional threat awareness, mana shield, level 1. Automatic barrier against lethal damage, recovery enhancement, level 1. Accelerated healing, locked skills, 44, recent progress toward unlocking. Combat instinct magical counter, 47 units of mana, still small compared to advanced students, but massively more than he had started with. And with the battery Lysandra had given him, he had access to hundreds more. More importantly, he now understood how his system worked. Active exposure to magic, whether through absorption or combat, was the key to growth. The more dangerous his situations, the faster he developed. The combat demonstration wasn't just a challenge, it was an opportunity. The monthly combat demonstration drew crowds. Students from all tiers gathered in the grand arena, a circular amphitheater with enchanted seating that allowed everyone to see perfectly regardless of position. Professors sat in elevated boxes, administrators observed from special sections. The entire event was designed to showcase the Academy's prowess. Kael sat with the other F-tier students in the worst seats, high up and far from the action, but he could still see clearly as senior students took turns demonstrating techniques. A fire specialist created a dragon made of flame that roared across the arena. A spatial mage teleported between dozens of points in seconds. A combat specialist defeated 3 opponents simultaneously without taking a single hit. Then Aldrich Vance stepped into the arena. For my demonstration, he announced, his magically amplified voice echoing throughout the space, I require a volunteer from the junior classes, someone who might benefit from learning about real magical combat. His gaze swept the crowd until it settled on Kael. You, the late awakening case. Join me. Murmurs rippled through the audience. This was unusual. Seniors typically chose opponents from their own tier or slightly below. Challenging an F-tier student was unprecedented and somewhat cruel. Kael stood. Rowan grabbed his arm. You don't have to do this. You can refuse.
No,
Kael said quietly.
I really can't.
He made his way down to the arena floor, feeling thousands of eyes upon him. Aldrich waited with a predatory smile, already gathering silver energy around his hands. The commoner who dreams above his station, Aldrich said, just loud enough for the nearest spectators to hear. I'll make this educational. Try not to cry. Educational, Kael repeated. Is that what we're calling this? A professor stepped forward to officiate. This is a demonstration, not a duel. Senior Vance will showcase combat techniques. Junior Ashford will attempt to defend. The session ends when I declare it complete. In other words, there were no real rules protecting Kael. Begin, the professor said. Aldrich moved immediately. Silver chains of energy shot from his palms, wrapping around Kael's limbs, his torso, his throat. The argentum binding that Lysandra had warned him about. This technique, Aldrich announced to the crowd, is designed to suppress an opponent's magical circuits. Once bound, even experienced mages find spellcasting impossible. The binding tightened. Kael felt it trying to shut down his magic, targeting the standard circuits that every mage possessed. But those circuits were dormant in him, nearly atrophied. The binding found nothing to suppress. Still, Kael followed Lysandra's advice. He acted like it was working. He struggled, gasped, let his legs buckle slightly, let Aldrich believe his technique was effective. As you can see, Aldrich continued, circling his helpless victim, the correct application of binding magic renders any opponent harmless. Now I'll demonstrate controlled combat application. He punched Kael in the stomach with magically enhanced strength. The blow drove the air from Kael's lungs. Another punch followed, then another. Aldrich was methodical, targeting areas that would cause pain without leaving obvious marks. Through the pain, Kael's mana absorption was working overtime. Every blow Aldrich delivered was magically enhanced, and every enhancement leaked energy that Kael's passive skill devoured. A stem notification. Mana reserve increasing. Current, 51 units. Notice how the bound subject cannot defend or counterattack, Aldrich lectured, delivering a kick that sent Kael sprawling. In real combat, you would follow this initial suppression with finishing strikes. He raised his hand, silver energy gathering into a spear shape. Of course, in a demonstration, we show restraint. The energy spear stabbed downward toward Kael's shoulder, intended to wound but not kill. Kael decided he had absorbed enough. His mana shield activated automatically, a translucent barrier that caught the spear and held it. Aldrich's eyes widened with shock. The crowd gasped. That's not possible, Aldrich snarled. You're bound, your circuits are suppressed. Kael rose to his feet, shrugging off the silver chains like they were made of paper. They hadn't been connected to anything after all. His actual magical pathways were completely different. Your technique, Kael said loud enough for everyone to hear, targets standard magical circuits. Mine aren't standard. He reached into his jacket and touched the mana battery Lysandra had given him, feeling the energy flood into his reserve. Stem notification, mana reserve at maximum capacity. 500 units available. Aldrich attacked again, abandoning the binding technique for raw offensive magic. Silver lances, cutting winds, concussive blasts. The attacks were fast, powerful, the result of years of elite training. Kael's danger sense guided him through them. He dodged the first lance by inches, feeling it pass through the space his heart had occupied moments before. He ducked under the cutting winds. He absorbed the concussive blast, converting its energy into fuel for his own reserves. How? Aldrich screamed, losing his composure completely. You're F tier! You should be helpless. I'm not what my tier says I am, Kael replied. I'm what I actually am. He counterattacked for the first time. The illumination spell, the one he had accidentally overcharged during his first practice session, but this time he did it deliberately, channeling his unconventional pathways with precise intention. Light exploded from his palm with the intensity of a small sun. Aldrich raised barriers, but the radiance simply bypassed them, not as an attack, but as overwhelming brilliance that made it impossible to see, impossible to target, impossible to fight. When the light faded, Kael was standing directly in front of Aldrich, with his hand inches from the noble's throat. Yield, Kael said softly, or this demonstration gets more educational. Aldrich's face was a mask of fury, humiliation, and something else. Fear. This proves nothing, he spat. You cheated somehow. Used forbidden techniques. This will be investigated. Kael stepped back, addressing the crowd that had fallen utterly silent. I'm a commoner with no training, no connections, and the lowest aptitude rating in years, but I just survived everything an A-tier noble could throw at me. Maybe your ranking system isn't as accurate as you think. He walked out of the arena, leaving chaos in his wake. The aftermath was intense. Professors detained Kael for hours, examining him, questioning him, trying to understand what had happened. Magister Chen advocated for him, explaining his unusual magical structure. Other teachers wanted him expelled, claiming he must have cheated. The debate raged until past midnight. In the end, they couldn't prove any wrongdoing. His magical structure, however unusual, wasn't illegal. The techniques he had used were derivatives of basic spells, just applied in non-standard ways. The mana battery he had used was perfectly legitimate equipment that many students possessed. They had to let him go, but Kael knew this wasn't over. As he walked back to his dorm, he saw Aldrich watching from a window in the noble wing. The silver-haired student's expression promised revenge. Good, Kael thought. Come after me. Every attack makes me stronger. In his room, he checked his status one final time. Current status, host. Kael Ashford tier, F official, B plus estimated true, mana reserve, 234 units, post-demonstration, growth rate, rapid passive skills, mana absorption, level 3, rate significantly improved. Danger sense, level 2, now provides split-second combat warnings mana shield. Level 2, stronger barriers, lower mana cost. Recovery enhancement. Level 2, healing accelerated combat instinct. Level 1, new. Provides intuitive understanding of combat flow locked skills. 42, next unlock estimated magical counter. Requires absorbing a spell during casting. On his first day, he had walked through those gates as the weakest student in the academy's recent history. Now, barely 2 days later, he had humiliated a noble heir, revealed a hidden power structure, and begun ascending towards strength that shouldn't be possible. And this was only the beginning, because Kael Ashford had discovered something that every arrogant mage in Valorhein Academy would soon learn to fear. His passive skills didn't just protect him, they didn't just make him stronger. They turned every challenge into growth, every attack into fuel, every enemy into an unwitting trainer. The more they tried to crush him, the more powerful he would become. Let them come. News of the demonstration spread through Valorhein Academy like wildfire, carried by a storm. By the next morning, Kael Ashford was no longer the Academy's laughingstock. He was its most controversial topic. Walking to breakfast, he heard fragments of conversation from every direction. Students huddled in groups, debating what they had witnessed. Some defended Aldrich, claiming the commoner must have used some form of cheating. Others pointed out that multiple professors had examined Kael and found nothing irregular. A few brave souls even suggested that maybe, just maybe, the Academy's ranking system was flawed. Did you see his face? Aldrich looked like he was going to have a stroke. The binding technique is supposed to be unbreakable. How did a nobody just shrug it off? I heard his magical circuits are completely different from normal, like not even human standard. That's ridiculous. He's probably from some hidden noble house using a fake identity. Kael ignored the whispers and found his usual seat in the remedial cafeteria. Rowan and Alara were already there, both looking at him with expressions that mixed admiration with concern. You absolute madman, Rowan said, sliding a plate of food toward him. I thought he was going to kill you for the first 5 minutes. That was the point, Kael replied, eating mechanically. He was exhausted from the night's interrogations, but oddly energized at the same time. His passive skills hummed contentedly, having absorbed considerable energy during yesterday's conflict. He needed to believe he was winning. Ilara shook her head. That was the most dangerous gamble I've ever seen. What if your shield hadn't activated in time? What if his binding technique had actually worked? Then I would have lost. But I had reliable information that it wouldn't. Kael thought of Lysandra but didn't mention her. He still didn't fully understand her motives, and the fewer people who knew about their connection, the better. The binding targets, standard magical circuits. Mine don't work that way. About that. Ilera leaned closer, lowering her voice. I've been doing some research. Your magical structure, the way Magistra Chen described it during your examination, it sounds like something from ancient texts. Before the standardization of magical education, there were mages who developed completely individual pathways. They were called variant casters. Kael's interest sharpened. What happened to them? Most died young. Without proper guidance, their unique structures often became unstable. The few who survived became incredibly powerful, but unpredictable. Eventually, the magical academies developed standardized training specifically to prevent variant casting. It was considered too dangerous. So I'm not just unusual, I'm a throwback to an older, wilder form of magic. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is that you're a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Ilara's expression was serious. Have you considered what happens if your unconventional structure destabilizes? Kael had considered it, actually. The system seemed designed to prevent exactly that kind of failure, guiding his development along safe pathways even as it exploited his unusual nature. But he couldn't explain that to Alara without revealing more than he wanted to. I'll be careful, he said simply. For now, I'm more worried about Aldrich's response. He's not going to accept yesterday's humiliation quietly. That's an understatement. Rowan looked nervously toward the door. Word is his father is furious. Professor Vance has apparently been pushing for your immediate expulsion. The only reason you're still here is that Magistrate Chen and a few others are arguing for continued observation. Observation, Kael repeated. They want to study me, better than being kicked out, or worse. The morning classes proceeded relatively normally, though Kael noticed that other students gave him more space than before. Not out of respect, exactly. More like caution. He had proven himself unpredictable, and unpredictability made people nervous. In basic magical theory, Professor Vance delivered his lecture with barely contained rage, pointedly ignoring Kael's existence while simultaneously making comments about students who thought they were special. The irony of an obviously biased professor accusing others of arrogance wasn't lost on anyone. Stesma notification, hostile intent detected nearby. Level, moderate. Source, multiple individuals. The warning came during his walk to the next class. Kael's danger sense had upgraded again overnight, now providing more specific information about potential threats. He slowed his pace, scanning the corridor ahead. 3 students stepped out from a side passage. They weren't wearing academy uniforms, but rather training gear, and their badges marked them as B tier. They moved to block his path, while a 4th appeared behind him, cutting off retreat. Kael Ashford, the largest one said. We'd like a word. 4 against 1 in an empty hallway. This seems like a productive conversation waiting to happen. Kael's tone was light, but he was already calculating escape routes and defensive options. His mana reserve sat at 234 units, enough for significant defensive measures. Aldrich sent us a message, another student said. He's very disappointed with how yesterday's demonstration went. He feels you didn't show proper respect. Respect is earned. He hasn't earned mine. The large student cracked his knuckles. See, that's the wrong attitude. We're here to adjust your perspective. Nothing permanent. Just enough to remind you where you belong in the hierarchy. They moved simultaneously, clearly having practiced this. The 2 in front attacked with coordinated spells, trying to pin him down, while the ones behind moved to flank. Standard group tactics designed to overwhelm a single target. But they had never fought someone with danger sense. Kael saw their attacks coming almost before they began. He sidestepped the first spell, ducked under the second, and used his own momentum to spin away from the flanking students. They ended up hitting each other instead of him, their coordination working against them. Too slow, Kael said. The large student snarled and launched a concussive blast at point-blank range. Kael didn't dodge this one. He absorbed it, feeling his mana reserve tick upward as the magical energy converted into fuel. System notification. Mana absorption activated. Gained 3 units. What the hell? The student stared at his hand like it had betrayed him. That should have knocked you across the room. Should have, didn't. Kael counterattacked with a burst of concentrated light, not as intense as his demonstration technique, but still bright enough to blind temporarily. The 4 students recoiled, covering their eyes. He didn't waste the opportunity. Using the combat instincts his new passive skill provided, Kael moved through them like water through stones. A precise strike to the first student's solar plexus, a sweep of the leg that dropped the second, a redirecting grab that sent the third stumbling into the fourth. In 5 seconds, all 4 attackers were on the ground, groaning and confused. Tell Aldrich, Kael said, standing over them, that if he wants to teach me lessons, he should come himself. Sending minions just gives me practice. He walked away, leaving them to pick themselves up. STEM notification, combat engagement complete. Combat instinct upgraded to level 2, new passive skill approaching unlock, physical enhancement. The attack had been intended to intimidate him. Instead, it had given him exactly what he needed: more combat experience, more absorbed energy, and progress toward new abilities. Aldrich's strategy was counterproductive, and the noble didn't even realize it. By lunch, rumors of the hallway fight had spread. Kael found himself approached by students he had never met, some offering grudging respect, others probing for weaknesses. He deflected them all with non-committal responses. But one encounter was different. Lysandra Fung appeared beside him as he walked between buildings, falling into step as if they were old acquaintances. Her presence immediately drew stares. A platinum tier student associating with an F tier was unheard of. You took my advice, she said quietly, not looking at him. Let Aldrich believe his technique worked, then revealed the truth at the perfect moment. His reputation suffered more from that demonstration than any direct defeat could have accomplished. You didn't mention he would send thugs afterward. I assumed you could handle them. Clearly I was correct. A small smile crossed her face. Your growth rate is remarkable. 2 days ago, you could barely cast a spell. Now you're handling coordinated attacks from B-tier students. How? Kael considered his response carefully. My unusual magical structure lets me develop differently than normal students. Standard techniques don't work on me, but that cuts both ways. I'm harder to train, but also harder to suppress. An interesting way to phrase it. Lysandra stopped walking, forcing him to stop as well. I have another proposition for you, More late night training sessions, something more substantial. The Academy's tournament is in 3 months. It's the primary method for students to advance their official tier rankings. Normally, F tier students aren't allowed to participate, but there's an exception clause. If a student receives sponsorship from a platinum tier, they can enter regardless of their current standing. Kael felt his interest sharpen despite himself. You want to sponsor me? I want to see what happens when the Academy's rigid hierarchy encounters someone it can't categorize. You're already disrupting things by merely existing. Imagine what you could do with official sanction to challenge anyone who stands in your way. What do you get out of this? I told you before, I have my own grudge against the Vance family. Aldrich's father, Professor Vance, was involved in something years ago that cost me someone important. I can't move against him directly because of his position and connections. But if his son, his precious heir, is publicly defeated by a sponsored commoner in an official tournament, she smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That would be almost enough. Almost. Nothing is ever enough, Kael, but it would be a start. She handed him a folded piece of paper. This is the sponsorship form. Sign it if you're interested. Return it to me within a week. She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the crowd of students. Kael looked at the paper in his hand. Official entry into the Academy tournament, the opportunity to challenge anyone, regardless of tier. The backing of a platinum tier student who clearly had her own agenda. STEM notification, major opportunity detected. Tournament participation would provide significant exposure to high-level magical combat. Rapid skill development highly probable. The system wanted him to accept. His common sense warned him that he was becoming entangled in conflicts he didn't fully understand. Lyssandra's grudge against the Vances could drag him into dangerous territory, but the alternative was stagnation, remaining in the F tier, limited to remedial classes, never testing himself against real opponents. His passive skills needed stimulation to grow. His potential needed challenges to unlock. He had come to this academy with nothing. Now, barely 3 days later, he had a path forward. He just had to survive walking it. The afternoon brought a surprise. Magistra Chen pulled him aside after class and led him to a part of the academy he had never seen before. A tower that seemed to exist slightly out of phase with the rest of the buildings, its stone walls shimmering with active enchantments. This is the Variant Studies Laboratory, she explained, leading him through wards that scanned him in ways he could feel but not identify. It was established centuries ago to research unusual magical development. When standardized training became dominant, this place was largely forgotten, but it was never shut down. Inside, the laboratory was filled with equipment Kael couldn't name, crystals and runes and devices that hummed with strange energies. Ancient books lined the walls. Charts showed anatomical diagrams of magical structures that looked nothing like the standard human model. Your circuits, Magister Chen continued, are very similar to patterns documented here, variant casters, as they were called. The Academy tried to eliminate this development path because it was unpredictable, but the records suggest that properly nurtured variants could achieve things standard mages considered impossible. Why are you showing me this? Because I don't believe in wasting potential. The administration wants to study you like a laboratory specimen. Professor Vance wants you expelled or worse. But I see something different. I see a student who might actually benefit from understanding what he is, rather than being forced into molds that don't fit. She gestured to a desk covered in books. These are the surviving records of variant development techniques. Study them. Learn what your predecessors discovered about their own abilities. It won't follow standard curriculum, but then neither do you. Kael picked up one of the books, feeling the age in its pages. The text was in an archaic script, but somehow he could read it, the words rearranging themselves in his perception as if translated by some external force. STEM notification. Historical records detected. Analyzing for applicable techniques. Integration with existing passive skill framework in progress. The book described a variant caster from 300 years ago, a woman named Sarah Brightholt, who had discovered how to absorb magical attacks and convert them into healing energy. Her technique had made her nearly unkillable in combat, but the standard academies had declared it forbidden knowledge, claiming it violated natural magical law. Another book detailed a variant who had developed perfect danger sense, able to perceive threats before they even formed in an opponent's mind. The author theorized that variants weren't constrained by the same magical rules as standard casters, because their unique circuits created entirely different relationships with magical energy. Hours passed as Kael absorbed the information. Each account confirmed what he had already begun to suspect. His passive skill system wasn't random or arbitrary, it was the natural evolution of variant casting, perhaps enhanced by whatever force had triggered his unusual awakening. STEM notification, historical integration complete. 3 techniques compatible with current passive skill framework. Would host like to attempt integration? Available techniques: 1. Brighthold absorption enhances mana absorption with healing properties. 2. Mindwood sense enhances danger sense with precognitive elements. 3. Circuit overcharge temporarily enhances all passive skills at cost of stability. Kael selected all 3 for integration, feeling new pathways forming in his unconventional magical structure. The process was uncomfortable, like stretching muscles he didn't know he had, but when it completed, his status screen showed significant improvements. Dated passive skills, mana absorption, level 4, now partially converts absorbed energy into healing effect. Danger sense, level 3, now provides brief precognitive warnings, physical enhancement. Level 1, new, passively improves physical capabilities. Warning, circuit overcharge integrated but unstable. Use only in emergencies. When Kael finally left the laboratory, the sun had set. He had spent the entire afternoon and evening studying, and his mind felt like an overstretched fabric, but he had learned more about his true nature in those hours than in all his previous weeks of confusion. He wasn't broken. He wasn't a mistake. He was a variant caster, heir to an ancient and suppressed magical tradition. His passive skills were the natural expression of that heritage, enhanced by whatever force had chosen him during his awakening. And he was only beginning to discover what he could become. The week that followed was a whirlwind of development and conflict. Aldrich continued sending proxies to attack Kael, each group slightly more skilled than the last. B tier students, then B plus, then a squad of A tier juniors who were convinced they could succeed where others had failed. Each attack provided more combat experience, more absorbed energy, and more progress toward new abilities. By the end of the week, Kael's status had transformed. Current status: host, Kael Ashford tier, F official, A estimated true mana reserve, 892 units, growth rate exceptional passive skills, mana absorption level 5, rate now extremely efficient, healing integration, danger sense, level 4, recognized warnings now extend several seconds, mana shield, level 3, can sustain barrier under significant attack, recovery enhancement, level 3, major wounds heal within hours. Combat Instinct, level 3, provides intuitive combat mastery. Physical enhancement, level 2, strength and speed significantly improved. Locked skills, 38 nearest unlock, magical counter, requirements nearly met. He signed Lysandra's sponsorship form and returned it to her. The tournament was now 3 months away, and he intended to spend that time preparing in every way possible. Classes became almost irrelevant. The remedial curriculum taught him nothing useful, but he attended anyway to avoid additional scrutiny. His real training happened elsewhere, in the Variant Studies Laboratory, in midnight sessions with Lysandra, and in the constant attacks from Aldrich's proxies. Rowan and Elara noticed his transformation and reacted differently. Rowan was thrilled, treating each of Kael's victories as a triumph for all F-tier students. Elara was more cautious, warning him about the political enemies he was accumulating. The Vance family has connections throughout the kingdom, she said during one of their study sessions. Even if you beat Aldrich in the tournament, they could make your life very difficult afterward. Let them try, Kael replied. Every challenge makes me stronger. That's not metaphorical anymore. It's literal. That's what worries me. What happens when you run out of challenges? When there's no one left who can push you? It was a good question, one he didn't have an answer for. His entire growth depended on facing opponents who could actually threaten him. If he became too powerful, would his development plateau? The system provided some reassurance. STEM notification. Current development trajectory accounts for diminishing returns. As host's power increases, quality of stimulation required also increases. Tournament participation will provide appropriate tier of challenges, Long-term growth remains viable. So the system was thinking ahead. It wasn't just reacting to immediate threats, but planning for sustained development. That suggested an intelligence behind the passive skill framework, something guiding his progress toward a specific goal. What that goal was, Kael couldn't guess, but he had come too far to stop now. The first real test of his enhanced abilities came 3 weeks after the demonstration. Aldrich, frustrated by the failure of his proxy attacks, decided to confront Kael personally. He chose the most public possible venue, the main courtyard, during lunch hour when hundreds of students were present. Ashford. The noble's voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. You've been hiding behind your sponsor's skirts long enough. Face me properly. Kael set down his food and stood. Around him, students scrambled to clear space, sensing that this confrontation would be significant. I've been facing your minions properly all week, Kael replied calmly. Apparently, you weren't satisfied with their performance. Those fools were supposed to soften you up. Now I'll finish what they started. Aldrich's hands glowed with silver energy, far more intense than during the demonstration. He had been training specifically for this rematch. No rules this time, no restraint, just you and me, students of the academy. A professor stepped forward, his expression conflicted. This kind of confrontation is sanctioned. Lysandra appeared from the crowd, her platinum badge gleaming. Under Article 17 of the Academy Charter, any sponsored student may accept challenges from higher tier students without official supervision. I sponsor Kael Ashford. He accepts this challenge. The professor hesitated, then stepped back. The charter was clear, and Lysandra's authority as a platinum tier was beyond question. Fine. Aldrich smiled, but there was no humor in it. Then let's see what you're really capable of, commoner. He attacked without further warning. Silver chains erupted from both hands, but these weren't the same binding technique he had used before. They were sharper, stronger, designed to cut rather than contain. Kael's enhanced danger sense gave him almost 2 full seconds of warning. He moved before the chains reached him, not just dodging, but positioning himself to counterattack. Stem notification, hostile magic detected, mana absorption active, absorbing residual energy. The chains passed through the space he had occupied, carving gouges in the courtyard stone. Aldrich followed with a barrage of silver projectiles, each one screaming through the air with enough force to punch through metal armor. Kael's mana shield activated automatically, catching the projectiles and holding them suspended in the air. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the projectiles began dissolving, their energy flowing into Kael rather than exploding against his barrier. You're feeding me, Kael said, flexing his fingers as power surged through him. Every attack makes me stronger. Are you sure you want to continue? Aldrich's face twisted with fury. Lies, tricks. I'll overwhelm whatever technique you're using. He began a more complex spell, one that gathered silver light from the air itself, concentrating it into a spear of such intensity that the ground beneath it began to glow with transferred heat. Argentum's lance, someone in the crowd whispered. That's an A-tier technique. He's trying to kill him. The lance hurled toward Kael with speed almost too fast to track. Almost. His precognitive danger sense had warned him 3 seconds before Aldrich even completed the spell. Kael had already begun moving, positioning himself not to dodge, but to intercept. At the last moment, he reached out and grabbed the lance with his bare hand. The crowd gasped. Aldrich's eyes went wide with disbelief. The lance, which should have pierced straight through any barrier, instead trembled in Kael's grip, its energy visibly draining into his body. Stem notification. Massive magical energy detected. Absorbing. Warning. Rate approaching system capacity. Emergency stabilization active. Kael felt the power flooding into him, almost too much to handle. His circuits, unconventional as they were, strained to accommodate the influx. For a moment, he thought he might actually rupture from the overload. Then the energy integrated, flowing into his reservoir, expanding his capacity beyond anything he had achieved before. Thank you, he said to Aldrich, releasing the depleted lance, which crumbled to dust. That was exactly what I needed. Current status: mana reserve 2,347 units, emergency capacity unlocked. The upgrade was massive. In a single exchange, he had more than doubled his previous maximum. Aldrich's attack, intended to destroy him, had instead catalyzed a breakthrough. Aldrich stood frozen, unable to process what he had witnessed. His ultimate technique absorbed and converted. His enemy stronger than before. Yield, Kael said, stepping forward. This doesn't have to continue. Never. Aldrich's voice cracked, but he began gathering energy again. I am Aldrich Vance, heir to the greatest magical lineage in the kingdom. I will not lose to a commoner with no name, no history, no worth. He unleashed everything he had left, a desperate barrage of attacks that represented years of elite training. Silver chains, projectiles, cutting winds, concussive blasts, technique after technique thrown with frantic intensity. Kael absorbed them all. His mana reservoir climbed higher and higher. His passive skills fed on the onslaught, growing stronger with each impact. The very attacks meant to destroy him became fuel for his advancement. And then finally, Aldrich collapsed. He had exhausted himself completely, depleted every drop of mana in his body, and Kael was still standing, stronger than when the fight began. That's enough, Kael said quietly. You've lost. The courtyard was utterly silent. Hundreds of students had witnessed an A-tier noble pour everything into defeating an F-tier commoner and fail completely. STEM notification. Combat engagement complete. Multiple skill upgrades available. New passive skill unlocked. Magical counter. Host's victory against higher tier opponent has been recorded. Official tier reassessment now recommended. Kael turned and walked away, leaving Aldrich on his knees in the courtyard. Behind him, whispers exploded into shocked conversation. The hierarchy of Valorhein Academy had just been shattered, and Kael Ashford, the impossible student who shouldn't exist, was only getting started. The aftermath of the courtyard confrontation reshaped the Academy's social structure in ways no one could have predicted. Aldrich Vance withdrew from public view, reportedly suffering from what the professors called magical exhaustion syndrome. In truth, the psychological damage was worse than the physical. He had poured everything into defeating a commoner and had been thoroughly outclassed. Professor Vance's efforts to have Kael expelled intensified, but now he faced opposition from unexpected quarters. Magister Chen advocated loudly for continued study of Kael's unique abilities. Other professors, curious about variant casting after reviewing the laboratory's records, argued that Kael represented an opportunity for genuine magical advancement, and Lysandra Fang, with her platinum authority and mysterious connections, made it quietly clear that any official action against Kael would face her opposition. The students themselves split into factions. Some clung to traditional hierarchies, insisting that Kael's abilities were somehow illegitimate. Others saw him as proof that the ranking system was fundamentally flawed. A few ambitious students even approached him about training together, hoping to learn from his unconventional methods. Kael declined most offers. His passive skills grew through combat and absorption, not through teaching or conventional practice. Training with students who couldn't genuinely challenge him would be a waste of time. But he didn't decline everyone. Alara proved to have genuine analytical talent. Her research into variant casting provided context that helped Kael understand his own development. In exchange, she allowed her to observe his training sessions and document his progress for her own studies. Rowan, despite his self-proclaimed mediocrity, showed unexpected aptitude for support magic. His spells weren't powerful, but they could enhance others' abilities, a rare and valuable talent in team-based situations. Kael began including him in practice sessions as a way to develop coordinated tactics. The weeks passed. The tournament approached. Kael's status evolved continuously, each upgrade building on the last. Current status: Host, Kael Ashford tier. F, official, S estimated true, mana reserve. 8,943 units growth rate. Mana absorption, level 8. Danger sense, level 7. Mana shield, level 6. Recovery enhancement, level 5. Combat instinct, level 5. Magical counter, level 4. Elemental resistance, level 3. Aura projection, level 2. New locked skills. 29, his estimated true tier, had reached S-class, equivalent to the most talented students in the Academy's history. Yet his official ranking remained F-tier, a discrepancy that would become spectacularly apparent. The night before the competition, Lysandra summoned him to Training Hall 7-1 final time. You've exceeded every expectation, she said, circling him slowly. 3 months ago, you could barely defend yourself. Now you're capable of challenging anyone in this academy, including me. Disport, including you? Kael raised an eyebrow. That's quite a claim. It's an observation. Your growth rate is unprecedented. Your passive skills have evolved beyond anything the historical records describe. You're not just a variant caster anymore. You're something new entirely. That worries you. It intrigues me. She stopped in front of him. Tomorrow, you'll face opponents from every tier. The early rounds will be trivial. The later rounds will be genuine tests. Win them all, and you'll be officially recognized as S tier, the first commoner in Academy history to achieve that rank. And your revenge against the Vances? Her expression hardened. Aldrich won't participate. He hasn't recovered from your last confrontation, but his father will be watching from the professor's box. Every victory you claim will be a wound to his pride. That matters to me. Kael nodded slowly. After tomorrow, what happens then? That depends on you. The academy is just the beginning. Beyond these walls, there's an entire kingdom where power determines everything. If you can conquer this tournament, you can conquer much more. She paused. Or you can choose a quieter path. Use your abilities for simpler purposes. Live an ordinary life. That's not an option. No, Lysandra agreed. I didn't think it was. The tournament arena was 10 times larger than the grand arena used for regular demonstrations. Magically expanded seating accommodated thousands of spectators, not just students, but nobility, military officials, and representatives from other academies throughout the kingdom. Kael entered through the competitor's gate, his plain bronze badge a stark contrast to the gold and platinum worn by others. The announcement of his name drew mixed reactions, cheers from those who had heard the rumors, and jeers from those who still considered him an anomaly that shouldn't be competing. The bracket had been arranged with lower tier students in early rounds, ascending toward higher tiers as the tournament progressed. Kael's first opponent was a C tier student who specialized in wind magic. The fight lasted 12 seconds. Kael's enhanced danger sense let him predict every attack. His improved physical capabilities let him close distance before his opponent could complete a single spell, one precisely placed strike to a nerve cluster, and the match was over. The second opponent was B tier, wielding dual enchanted swords. 18 seconds. Kael's mana shield blocked the first strike, while his combat instinct guided his counterattack. The swordsman was down before he could launch a second offensive. Third opponent, B plus tier, a specialist in earth magic who could form constructs from the arena floor itself. 20 seconds. Kael absorbed the magical energy from each construct as it formed, denying his opponent the resources for sustained defense. By the fourth round, the crowd had fallen into shocked silence. An F-tier student was demolishing higher-tier opponents without appearing to exert himself. The gap between his official ranking and his demonstrated ability was beyond comprehension. The fifth opponent was A-tier, Serena Vale, a prodigy from a merchant family who had earned her ranking through pure talent rather than noble connections. Her speciality was ice magic, and she entered the arena with cold confidence. "You've surprised everyone today," she said, taking her position across from him. "But the early rounds were just warm-up. This is where real competition begins." "I look forward to it," Kael replied genuinely. He hadn't felt truly challenged since absorbing Aldrich's lance attack. Maybe Serena could provide the stimulation his passive skills needed. The signal sounded. Serena didn't hesitate. Ice erupted from the arena floor, forming walls that cut off Kael's approach angles, while simultaneously launching crystalline projectiles from multiple directions. STEM notification. Multi-vector attack detected. Danger sense providing prediction matrix. Recommend evasive pattern Gamma 7. Kael moved according to the system's guidance, threading through the barrage with precision that seemed almost supernatural. His absorption skill fed on the ice magic's residual energy, converting Serena's attack into his own resources. But Serena had been watching the earlier rounds. She knew he absorbed magical energy. Her next attack wasn't directed at him. Instead, she flash froze the arena floor, making footing treacherous while creating a cold zone that didn't directly target him and therefore couldn't be absorbed. Clever, Kael admitted, his physical enhancement compensating for the unstable surface. Environmental manipulation instead of direct attack. You absorb attacks, so I won't give you any to absorb. Serena smiled, but there was sweat on her brow. The environmental technique required massive mana output. It couldn't maintain it indefinitely. Kael pressed the advantage, charging across the frozen ground while she struggled to redirect her power. His aura projection skill, newly developed, flared outward in a wave that disrupted her concentration. She tried to raise an ice barrier, but he was too fast. His fist connected with her midsection, enhanced strength delivering enough force to launch her backward into her own frozen wall. The match ended with Serena on the ground, gasping, and Kael standing over her with his hand extended. "Good fight," he said sincerely. "You almost had the right strategy." She took his hand, accepting the help up. "Almost isn't good enough, but I'll remember what you taught me today. System notification, quality combat engagement completed. Combat instinct upgraded to level 7. New passive skill unlocked. Adaptive resistance. Host now automatically adjusts to environmental magical effects. 6th round. A+ tier. Another victory in under a minute. 7th round. S tier. Lysandra herself entered the arena opposite him. The crowd's murmuring rose to a roar. The Platinum Tier student who had sponsored an F Tier commoner was now facing him in official competition. The implications were staggering. "I wondered if we'd face each other," Kael said as they took positions. "I knew we would. This bracket was designed specifically to make it happen." Lysandra's expression was unreadable. "I've been training you, testing you, preparing you for this moment. Now I need to see what you've become. You could have just asked. This is asking. In the only language that matters." The signal sounded. Lysandra attacked with techniques she had never shown him before, combinations of spatial magic and raw power that bent the rules of conventional combat. She teleported behind him, above him, beside him, strikes coming from impossible angles at impossible speeds. Kael's danger sense screamed warnings, his combat instinct provided responses, his mana shield deflected what he couldn't dodge, and his absorption converted what penetrated his defenses. But Lysandra was S tier for a reason. She had studied his abilities for 3 months. She knew exactly how his passive skills worked and had developed counters for each one. She couldn't prevent his absorption, but she could overwhelm it with sheer volume. Her attacks came faster than he could process them, filling his reservoir faster than his circuits could handle. SY Steam notification. Warning. Mana overflow approaching. Emergency stabilization insufficient. Circuit overcharge recommended. The unstable technique he had integrated from the variant studies records. It would temporarily boost all his passive skills, but at significant risk to his magical structure. He had no choice. Kael activated Circuit Overcharge. Power flooded through him, more than he had ever felt before. His danger sense expanded to cover the entire arena. His mana shield became impenetrable. His physical capabilities tripled. His absorption rate skyrocketed, and he counterattacked. For 30 seconds, the arena became a blur of impossible combat. Two powerhouses pushing beyond normal limits, exchanging techniques that would have destroyed lesser mages instantly. The audience couldn't follow what was happening, only see the aftermath, the craters, the shattered stone, the space itself seeming to warp under the pressure of their conflict. Then, Circuit Overcharge's time limit expired. Kael felt his power crash back to normal levels, his circuits burning from the strain. He stumbled, barely keeping his feet. Lysandra stood opposite him, breathing hard, her uniform singed and torn. She had taken significant damage during his overcharged assault, but she was still standing. "Impressive," she said, raising her hand to deliver a finishing blow. But not quite enough. Her palm glowed with gathered energy. One more attack, and Kael would be defeated. STEM notification, critical combat scenario detected. Emergency skill unlock triggered. New passive skill, Limit Breaker. Allows temporary access to abilities beyond current capacity when survival is at stake. The notification surprised him. A skill that only activated in life or death situations. Power flooded through him again, different from Circuit Overcharge. This wasn't unstable enhancement. This was evolution itself. His passive skill framework pushing beyond its current boundaries to meet the threat. He moved, his fist connected with Lysandra's palm before her attack could launch, the impact sending a shockwave through the arena that knocked spectators from their seats despite the protective wards. She flew backward, tumbling across the stone floor, and didn't get up. The arena fell silent. Then the announcement came, winner, Kael Ashford. He had done it. He had defeated an S-tier opponent. A commoner from a nameless village had just won the Valorhein Academy tournament. The crowd exploded. Lysandra recovered consciousness as medics attended to her. Her eyes found Kael's across the arena, and she smiled, a genuine expression he had never seen from her before. Perfect, she whispered, too quietly for anyone else to hear. Absolutely perfect. The aftermath was chaos. Officials demanded explanations. Professors argued about the legitimacy of his victory. Noble representatives protested that a commoner shouldn't be allowed to claim S-tier status. The Academy's hierarchy, which had stood for centuries, was being fundamentally challenged. Through it all, Kael stood calmly, waiting for the storm to settle. Eventually, the headmaster himself descended from his observation box, an ancient mage whose power filled the arena with palpable pressure. Kael Ashford, the headmaster said, his voice carrying to every corner of the space. You entered this tournament as an F-tier student and defeated every opponent, including our highest-ranked competitor. By the rules of this academy and this competition, you are hereby recognized as S-tier. He paused, letting the declaration sink in. But more than that, you have demonstrated abilities that haven't been seen in generations. Variant casting, a magical tradition we thought lost. Your existence proves that our understanding of magic is incomplete. The headmaster's gaze bore into Kael with ancient intensity. I am extending a personal invitation. Join the Academy's Advanced Research Division. Help us understand what you are and what you can become. The potential benefits, not just to this institution but to magical knowledge itself, are immeasurable. Kael considered the offer. It was everything a student could want: recognition, resources, the backing of the Academy's highest authority. But his system had other ideas. Accepting current offer will provide comfort, but limit growth. Host's potential requires challenges beyond academic environment. Recommendation, decline. Seek greater tests in the wider world, the wider world. Threats and opportunities that the sheltered academy couldn't provide. I'm honored by the invitation, Kael said, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. But I can't accept. This tournament was proof of concept. Now I need to see what I can really do. He turned to address the entire audience, thousands of people who had just watched him demolish their assumptions about magical potential. I came to this academy as the weakest student in 17 years. You all saw what I was, or thought you did. Now you've seen what I can become. Remember that the next time you dismiss someone for not fitting your expectations. He walked out of the arena, ignoring the shouted questions and the scrambling officials. Outside, Ilara and Rowan were waiting. That was incredible, Rowan breathed. You actually won, against everyone. And then you turned down the headmaster's offer, Ilara added, her expression calculating. Where do you go from here? Kael looked toward the horizon, where mountains rose against the setting sun. There's a whole kingdom out there, dungeons that haven't been cleared, monsters that haven't been defeated, mysteries that haven't been solved. He felt his passive skills humming with anticipation. The academy taught me what I am. Now I need to discover what I can become. System notification. Academy phase complete. New phase initiating. Kingdom exploration. Enhanced challenges detected in multiple regions. Rapid growth opportunities available. His system was ready. He was ready. On his first day at the Magic Academy, everyone thought Kael Ashford was the weakest student who had ever enrolled. Now, having crushed every senior student who stood in his way, he was walking out as something else entirely. And his journey was only beginning, so there you have it. The incredible story of a nobody who became somebody, a commoner who crushed nobles, a student written off by everyone who rewrote what was possible. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing Manhwa content. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below telling me your favorite part. Was it when Kael absorbed Aldrich's ultimate technique? When he defeated Lysandra in the final round? Or maybe when he turned down the headmaster's offer because he knew he was destined for something greater? Whatever moment caught you, let me know. I read every comment and love hearing what resonates with you all. Until next time, keep reading, keep dreaming, and remember, sometimes the weakest student in the academy is the one who ends up changing everything. Peace.